Welcome to Earn More, Stress Less with me, Caro Sison. This podcast is for self-employed business owners just like you who really want to grow their business and become successful, but without all the stress and hassle. I want to share my 30 years of business experience to show you how simple it can be to earn more money and how you can get organised without needing a business degree or any other qualifications. I'll be talking about the easy steps that you can put in place right now to start earning more money today and to help you get the business that you deserve and dream of. Without further ado, let's get started. This week's podcast is sponsored by Pocket PA, helping self-employed business owners to get organised, understand their finances and do their accounts all in one place using a powerful online tool. If you're serious about making a profit and having a successful business, then using a simple digital web app like Pocket PA is the best way to grow and scale your business. Visit pocketpa.com for more details and start managing your money like a pro today. Hello and welcome to Earn More, Stress Less with me, Caro Sison. Today we're talking all things legal and in particular about having the right terms and conditions in your business. I've got Joanne Fisher joining us and she's the go-to expert and my own legal powerhouse who I use. She's going to be talking to you and me about how to ensure that your business is fully protected. And we'll start by talking to Jo about how she's become successful in the legal arena and then moved into running her own self-employed business alongside her busy family. And then Jo's going to share with us today some really valuable tips about getting the right terms and conditions in place and on how you can protect your business from stress and aggravation when things don't always go according to plan. In fact, this is going to be one of a few episodes because Jo's going to cover off some different topics on various other legal fronts to specifically help you as a self-employed business owner. So do listen out for her again. So thanks for joining us. Welcome, Jo. How are you today?
Hi, Caro. Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you.
That's so good. So would you be able to just start off by just telling us about your journey up to now and how you got started in self-employment? Because you've been working for yourself for a little while, and I think it's really interesting for people to just hear how you got into your own self-employed business.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, I've been in the legal industry now. This is I think I'm going into my 22nd year next year, which is always a bit scary, isn't it? But I started way back when with one of the big corporates and trained working for really high profile clients. So a great way to start your career with all the best partners, best lawyers training you. And I stayed with that big corporate for 7 years, working with some real big names. And then decided to move to a smaller practice, which would take me to around 2008, actually, where I worked for a number of years then, working with smaller SME businesses, but still working mainly in property back then, in real estate, until I moved over to working in a smaller firm. You get pulled into lots of deals, working on different aspects of the deals. And that's when I realised, actually, that my love was really for corporate and the buying and selling of businesses, the terms and conditions, contracts, and negotiating and really serving directors and business owners. I did that for a number of years. And then in 2013, I was getting, for a few years before that, I was starting to feel like my heart was absolutely in the work, in the job. I loved being a lawyer, but I didn't feel like I was serving the right people. So in 2013, I went off on my own and set up a legal consultancy where I was working with much smaller businesses. It was more the guy on the high street. And I say guy because most of my clients were men back then. There weren't many women running businesses in my local area. So I worked for a number of years then on my own, helping those business owners to grow and scale their business, supporting them right through from setup to exit and selling their business. And then in 2018, I fell pregnant with a surprise set of twins, which took me from 2 children to 4 really quickly. And it just, I think, like a lot of women, made me reevaluate my life. I'd been spending a lot of time in the office, was definitely one of those mums that had my baby under the desk. I can remember breastfeeding actually with my daughter, my second daughter, in a meeting because it was so important that I carried on as normal. And when I had the twins, I just thought that's not going to be possible. I'm not going to be able to be that woman. So I decided to take some time out, and in my head, that time was 2 years. But when I looked back recently, it was only about 6 months before the cogs in my brain started turning again. And I was thinking, right, what can I do now? And just before the end of 2020, I decided to take the business online and really work It's hard to say lifestyle business. It's not a lifestyle business. I'm working every day still like I always did, but it's definitely more on my terms. I'm not going to an office. I'm not there 9 till 5 with those doors open. I now work in a way that suits me, but I also really specialize in serving women in business, because just like them, I found myself in a situation where I had to make life, business, being a mum work. And I think it's really important that women get access to the right support when they're running a business, because too often I think we're guilty of treating it almost like a hobby. You're just making a bit of extra cash for the family. And actually, when you really step into that business and lay the right foundations, I think your confidence can soar. So that's really where my heart is now.
And do you have an office that you go to, Jo, or do you work from home, or what's your sort of setup at the moment with your business?
So this is a podcast, so you can't see right now, but Caro and I can see each other. So this is my office space. I've got a designated space in the house, which the children aren't allowed in. It is a place I go and I can lock the doors. But no, I don't go to an office anymore. I actually, a few months ago, did think about it, and I went to visit a few places, and I just thought I'm going backwards if I do that, because I really want to be able to, one, demonstrate to my clients that it is possible, we can do it this way, but also I want to keep the flexibility that I can be mum and I can also be lawyer and business owner as well.
I think you must be in the countryside, Jo, because I think I can hear your birds. Can you hear them? Have you got birds right outside your window? No, it's totally fine. I was just thinking what that was, and I thought, oh my gosh, how lovely that you're in the countryside.
I am. We are quite remote, and those birds are quite loud. Sorry,
don't worry. They've joined the podcast. I just thought, what was that? And then I realised it was your birds, but totally fine. So, Jo, yes, you. I mean, similarly to me, you came from a very male-dominated workplace. I was in property and real estate, and obviously, mostly that's occupied by men, and for you in the legal field. So, do you think that was a factor in where you wanted to divert and really drill down to actually go the opposite way and to help women? Do you feel women are sort of represented in their businesses? Because from my point of view, I often feel that women start in business, particularly perhaps from a place of a hobby or a side hustle, and then they may not actually feel that they're a valid business until they really get going. And I really want to find out what interested you in how you chose your client to work with.
I can remember years ago, and it was way before, I can't even remember exact dates, but Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, was pretty transformational for me, because it made me, I remember reading that book and just thinking, holy shit, sorry for the language, this is so true. It's, as women, we sometimes don't lean into our careers. We're waiting, we take a step back, we know we're going to take time off because we're going to need maternity leave, that maybe we'll need more flexibility. And I think we can be guilty of almost leaning out of our careers or the choices we make about business. So that for me was really important and got me thinking about, one, I don't want to be that woman. I don't want my career to take a back seat because I become a mum. It shouldn't have to. Yeah, we've got to find ways to make it work, but we've got to show our children as well that we can have it all, even if it's tough sometimes. But then it was more as I came into the online space. So it wasn't an absolutely intentional choice to only work with women, and I do still work with some men, so I wouldn't say no, but I seem to attract more women these days, and I think it's because we are all juggling the same thing, and they want to work with people that understand that maybe they couldn't be available on that day because they got a phone call from the school, and it really got me wondering about how we can help those women to take it more seriously. And that's not meant in a patronizing way at all. Of course you take your businesses seriously, but having the confidence to stand behind yourself and back yourself to say, yeah, I can go all in with this and I will lay proper foundations because this is a long-term proposition for me. I'm not just dabbling for a few years when my children are small.
And you said, women can have it all, but I think it's also important to just say that, there is always a fine line and a balance, and it can sometimes be messy, and it isn't that we can have it all and it can all look effortless, because I know that for many women, and certainly for me when I had a younger family and I was back working, it was often really chaotic, and there was just often a lot of
anxiety and stress trying to juggle all of those things. But above it all, I really felt that I was a better mum because I had the space and the opportunity to do work. And, you know, whilst we want to be role models for our kids to show that we can have it all, I think we have to give a realistic picture that it isn't effortless or seamless. Or, you know, I sometimes feel like this swan where you might look great on the surface, but you're madly paddling under the water and everything's quite chaotic, and, you know, you don't have all your stuff together always. And do you find that that's a sort of a case where you have to give this perception because you're running, you know, a successful business, that you need to give that aura of success? Or do you find that because of the clients that you work with, it's okay to sort of do some adjustments and to be a little bit more flexible in your working patterns?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the honesty and vulnerability that we need to share is so important, because you are completely right. It is the hardest thing in the world to try and have it all. And we'd be doing a disservice to the people that are following us if we do pretend that everything's perfect. It's absolutely not. It's chaotic, as you say, every single day. You can have 5 meetings booked in and a call from the school to go and pick up your sick child. And yeah, you need the people you're working with to understand the realities of being a working mum. You also need a support network around you, but you also need to understand your clients, so that, and I think that's what's really worked for me, that actually we're all doing the same thing. We're almost in the trenches together, so we can support each other.
And it's about, you know, when you are running your own business, you can choose your clients to a large extent, to be able to know that the ones that you're going to be able to work with, not because you think that you're going to be letting them down and that they need to be ultra flexible for you for that moment that the school rings, which is unpredictable, but just to know that you're working with people that understand you as a person, that you run a business. And I think when we have our own self-employed business, we're so passionate in it. We're always wanting to give our best and go above and beyond in any event. So we're, you know, always the one that's mortified if we have to adjust something because of childcare or because of a relative that we're looking after or any other things that come into, but they're very impactful in a small business, because often if you're the only one that's delivering the service, you know, there isn't anyone to fall back on. So I think that, you know, there is that nice aspect that we can choose our clients and those sorts of things, but it is important that, you know, we're offering a professional service, but just to make sure that, you know, I don't think any self-employed business owner would want to misconstrue that everything isn't always perfect all of the time. And like you said, we are in the trenches together, you know, all recognizing that we're doing the best we can with what we have available to us. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk to you today, Jo, was about the terms and conditions, because I think a lot of small businesses get started and they, you know, there's a gazillion things that they have to do when they get started, and a lot of, you know, resources and, you know, money is tight at the beginning. So they're allocating how they're going to be using that money. And it doesn't always come front of mind to think that they have to sort out anything legal, particularly around their terms and conditions, perhaps. And I think a lot of people, when they start, and I have to put my hand up, I am one of those people. When I began, I thought, gosh, terms and conditions, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to get those. Well, who's doing something like me? I'm going to have a look at their website. I'm sure I can just press copy and paste, and I can just change it and put my name in here and my name in there. And yeah, I'll just change a few paragraphs and then I will call it my own. And I have to admit, I certainly think I did that for a couple of my very small businesses when I got started. So there is no judgment here on anyone that might have done that, but perhaps you could just run us through maybe the pitfalls of what would happen if somebody does do that, or if they don't actually have any terms and conditions, because I think, you know, legal things, they automatically sound expensive. You know, when you think about getting a legal person or a lawyer to look at something, you're thinking, oh God, that's going to be hundreds and thousands, and I haven't possibly got that money to get started with. It's, you know, I'm not big enough to do X, Y, and Z, or to have terms and conditions or a privacy policy, and what is all that GDPR. But if you don't have those terms and conditions, you aren't actually setting out your boundaries. And whilst things may go seamlessly and perfectly 99% of the time, I think that 1% or that 2%, those are the anxiety moments where you actually then are realizing that you don't have that protection for yourself or anything clearly set out to define how you sort of handle a dispute, or if somebody isn't happy with the service that you've delivered or something that you've given. So perhaps, I'm sorry, I've asked a lot of things there, Jo. Could you just go back to the first part and just remember exactly what I said and answer that in sequence? Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I went on a bit of a ramble. But no, yes.
I think that's how people think about legals. It feels overwhelming. It feels like there's so much to think about. So I don't know where to start. So I just won't do anything, or I'll just copy and paste something that's already online. I mean, first of all, that's a breach of somebody else's copyright doing that. And lawyers are savvy creatures. We will put in words that maybe are particular to our documents so that we can spot them in other places, because we know that happens. And actually, if you've drafted a set of terms and conditions for someone, you're not intending for 1,000 other people to be copying and pasting it. So first of all, worry about that.
Well, I know that the first thing people will think, oh, I'm too small, nobody will ever spot it. That will be one of those things that I'm just too little, nobody will ever bother about me. That will probably be one person's thought process, because I thought
totally. But yeah, and that's it. And you know, in all honesty, I'm not going to sit here saying people are going around checking on other people's terms and conditions. But if something did happen, you could find yourself at risk. So be aware of that. And actually, if you wouldn't like somebody to lift your content and use it as their own, as I'm sure we'll chat about at some point, think about it from that perspective too. But even more so than that, as when you're trading with consumers, the Consumer Rights Act tells us that we have to have a set of terms and conditions that gives certain information to our customers. If you're trading online, there's also e-commerce regulations that say that we have to give a certain amount of information to people to be trading effectively within the law. So I think that's the misconception sometimes, that it's optional, it's a nice to have, and it's absolutely not when you're in the online space. You need to have, they may not be terms and conditions, but you need to have somewhere where you're setting out all of the information that the law requires you to give. So, but also,
and what about the offline space, Jo? Because obviously you're quite centred in the online space as well. But for people that are working offline and delivering services, if they're in the beauty sector, the fitness sector, those sorts of things where they're seeing people face to face, is it still a legal obligation? Are they still required to have these terms and conditions?
Yes, because most of those people will be consumer-led. So if you're dealing with members of the public who are buying services from you for their own personal use, then yes, you're covered by the Consumer Rights Act, and you have legal requirements to comply with. So
that's clear. Everybody needs them, whether you're in the online or the offline space. You will need to have some terms and conditions in order to protect yourself and the people that you're seeing, your customers.
100%. You've got to check what you need. It also makes a difference. So your terms and when you're lifting and copying other people's, they may not be trading the same way as you. So if you're selling online, and most of those offline businesses as well will have a presence online. So even though they consider themselves to be offline, if they're marketing, they have a website where they're selling services online or through social media, they are also considered e-commerce. So they would have to think about that as well. So yeah, you can't really get around it. You have to have a set of terms and conditions. And I totally get it. You feel like it's a tick box exercise in the beginning. But what you really want your terms and conditions to do is to become a part of your business. So when you do go through a set of terms and conditions with a lawyer, and you don't just buy a template or lift a template from somewhere else, you get to understand what's in them, so that when issues do come up then with your clients or your customers, you know how to handle them. And that's really the message I'm trying to get across when it comes to terms and conditions and do you need them in your business, is that, yeah, they're a part of your operating procedures. They tell your clients what happens if they're not happy with your service, if they're not, if something's gone wrong with a payment, what do you do then? What happens if there's a dispute? Everything is set out in this. So it's quite easy to just direct your customers to the terms and conditions, and it kind of alleviates the need for that difficult conversation sometimes.
And ultimately, it's sort of the basis of your contract, of your working arrangement, isn't it? Because a lot of people get, particularly if people take online bookings, they'll ask them to tick and check that they agree with their terms and conditions, which could be all sorts of things about turning up on time, about payment, like you said, about cancellation, and if any payment is due. So if they want to rely on collecting a payment from somebody that's going to cancel an appointment effectively, it needs to be set out somewhere and clearly documented and made available for people when they're going through that booking process. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. And one of the big things to think about is when people are making bookings online, when you're dealing with consumers, we've got the 14-day cooling off period, which means that from the minute they book or the time that they book for a period of 14 days, they have the right to cancel and receive a full refund. There are certain sectors where it doesn't apply, but on the whole, it will apply to most businesses. So even if you provide the service within that 14 days, they can still request a refund unless it's in your terms and conditions that they waive the right to that refund because you've already done the service for them.
Wow, okay.
Lots of people, and that's something that people seem to get or not realise. And actually, if you don't have that 14-day cooling off period in your terms and conditions, and this is consumer-led, this is not B2B, business to business, if it's not in there, that period is extended to 12 months.
Wow. So that's one small clause or line that you should be having in your terms and conditions for anyone that's taking bookings online. Otherwise, it leaves them exposed.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Gosh, I didn't know that, Jo.
And for a period of 12
astonishing.
months, you can request a full refund if it's not in the terms and conditions. Luckily, not all of the general public know that. So we haven't got people going around checking your terms to make sure it's in there. But if a lawyer picks things up, you can very quickly find yourself in a difficult, tricky situation.
And is there, for new people that are entering in literally right at the grassroots, and they want to take care of some terms and conditions, but the budget is incredibly tight and they are concerned about, booking to see a solicitor. Do solicitors either do sort of entry level for new business startups quite a lot? If people shop around, do they sort of do special packages for new startup businesses, or is there an option that anywhere where people could go to look at using some templates under the guidance of a solicitor and they could work on their own terms and conditions? Or what would be sort of the gold star, the sort of entry level type options for people when they're new to business?
Yeah, there are lots of places where you can go and get a good set of terms and conditions and download a copy. It was something we avoided in our business actually for a long time because it was something I was hoping people wouldn't do, because I want them to understand what those clauses mean and not just use them as a tick box. But actually, we realise now that it's really important for those people that, as you say, grassroots coming through. But so we've actually designed a set of templates that we will be launching on our website soon, where we've got a video recording to go with them, where I'm talking you through the terms and conditions, explaining what the clauses are. And actually, and you can get that from many places, I'm sure, but I think that's the key, that once you understand why you're putting provisions in there and where you can change them and what you can add in to make it bespoke to your business, that's when it becomes really effective.
Perfect. And could you also just cover off about the privacy policy as well, because that's often separate and people see your terms and conditions and privacy policy. What's the difference between the two and why aren't they combined?
Okay, so your terms and conditions, think about your terms and conditions of sale. So they're how you interact with the public or with your customers. Your privacy policy and your cookie notice, actually, which is also required now, is something that came in with GDPR in 2018. And GDPR was a piece of European legislation, and the Data Protection Act then, 2018, was implemented in the UK to say that we will incorporate all of that legislation into our regulations as well. So now we've got a duty to tell customers. So it's all about transparency. GDPR just said people need to know what data you hold about them. They need to know it's safe. They need to know it's protected. They need to know who you share it with. And they need to know how to tell you to stop using their data. So your privacy policy makes sure you're complying with GDPR, and that should be on your website. It could be linked in your emails, because we've got a legal requirement to have one. And yeah, it's really easy, isn't it? Especially if you're beautician, hairdressers, where you take appointments, you write down somebody's telephone number and contact details in a book, and it may not even ever make its way onto a piece of software. You would hope it would with all of your clients in somewhere like Pocket PA, but we've got a duty to make sure that information is safe and it's stored and it's secure and it's not going to be breached.
Okay, so that's the difference between the privacy policy, and that would need to be GDPR compliant for people in the UK. Is in Europe as well, isn't it? Is it covered in Europe as well? Okay, perfect. So that, I think, sort of summarizes the importance of why people need terms and conditions and privacy policy, regardless of, whether you're entry level or whether you're quite an established business. And do you think you need to review them on a regular basis, or what would you suggest if you've had your terms and conditions for a wee while? Should you look at them every sort of 1 to 5 years, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, I generally advise my clients to go back and do a review if they've had something drafted bespoke for them. Where we've really dived into the business and made sure that they're completely in line with what you're doing. Every 3 years is about right. Okay. If you do buy a template and at that grassroots level, maybe check it 2-3 years in, because then your business is likely to have evolved quite a lot.
Perfect. Jo, thank you. That's been really helpful today. Thanks for sharing all of that with us. If our listeners would like to find out more about you and connect, where's the best place that they can find you?
Facebook or Instagram, I'm there at Joanne Fisher Law, or we've got a website, www.joannefisherlaw.co.uk.
Perfect. I will put that in the show notes. Thank you. So that's a wrap for this week's episode of Earn More, Stress Less podcast. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode, and have a fabulous day, whatever it is you're doing.
Thanks for listening to the Earn More, Stress Less podcast with me, Caro Sison. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then do hit subscribe so we can catch up again soon. And please kindly leave a review if you've got a moment, and share with anyone else that you think this podcast could help on their self-employed journey. If you're ready to make bigger breakthroughs in your own business life and want to get way more organised and understand your finances the really simple way, then start your very own 14-day free trial today using the super powerful software tool Pocket PA that I made for my own son and daughter. Go to pocketpa.com/podcast and let's get you on the way to earning more money and stressing much less. Have a great week, whatever you're doing.